And we are live. Okay. So I know this is kind of random timing wise. Um, and I'm glad to see that people are already hopping in and watching. Thanks so much. If you're watching from Twitter, please come over to YouTube so that you can join in the fun that happens in the chat. If you're on the YouTube side, feel free to, you know, ask questions in the chat, and we'll get this thing started. We've got several things to talk about. As you can tell from my thumbnail, I do plan to address what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys, both on the field and off the field. There's a lot to talk about, y'all. Um, and to say that the Cowboys aren't even really having a great season, there's a surprising amount of headlines out about the team. While we're waiting for people to file in, though, I guess I'll tell y'all a little bit of a story. I hope it's okay to talk about this. If you follow me on Twitter, then you saw where I said that my night was kind of derailed, right? So I usually work all day and then I get around to doing these lives whenever I have time. Because as much as I love sports, hence the title, and as much as I even like the Dallas Cowboys, none of that is paying my bills yet. So I still have to work during the day, and I meant to do this yesterday, but I was exhausted. Anyway, today I got home in time to get ready, finish up my notes, all that stuff, see if there was anything new to talk about. And I had already planned to go live late, and then I go to check my phone and I get a text message from someone who's like, "Yeah, did you get that email?" I'm not going to say who it was. I don't think they would mind, but I didn't get their permission. So sorry for leaving out names if you want the full story. But they're like, "Yeah, did you get that email?" Um, and this is gonna connect to something that we're gonna talk about later. But I was like, no. So I go to check my email. It was something from the Cowboys, and essentially, it was podcasters being informed that we will no longer have locker room access. And I'm hoping we still get a chance to talk to players because it's not so much the locker room access. That's the thing. For those of you who watch Girls Talk, Boys Talk, you know that talking about the conversations that we have with the players is a big part of our show. It's one of the angles that we're able to bring to our show that we feel like doesn't really happen much on the other Cowboy shows. And we can't even share everything that we're told, but even if we're told something that we shouldn't broadcast to the entire world, we do still like to take their perspectives into consideration whenever we're formulating our takes. And you can hear that sometimes. Maybe sometimes it's leaving out a name. Sometimes it's mentioning a mental or emotional aspect of a particular topic that hasn't been addressed. But that is something we try to do. And so when I was talking with this person about what happened, I kind of felt weird about being hurt, but then they were like, they expressed that they were upset too. And for me, I think the thing that makes it so tough is the fact that even despite the losses, one of the things that I was looking forward to for the rest of the season, and you can ask several people this, I had this conversation with a couple of people today. um, but one of the things that I was looking forward to for the rest of the season was being able to tell the story of this team and maybe gain a better understanding of what exactly is impacting their on-field performance. Um, because it's like you've got players who are not bad players. I know there are some units where the Cowboys don't have the best players in the league, right? But we're not talking about a bunch of bums. Like there's still Pro Bowlers on this team. There's still All Pros on this team. So you've got good players, some of whom have been in MVP conversations in the past. You've got a coach who's been able to get the team wins in the past, get them into the playoffs. You've got a new defensive coordinator who's known for being a disciplinarian. You've got an offensive coordinator who seems smart. And so it's like, what happens where you put all those pieces together and yet it doesn't result in the type of success that a lot of people expected coming into the season? Um, and I'm not even one of those, if the Cowboys don't win a Super Bowl, then they're not successful people. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about the people who thought this could be a year where the Cowboys at least made a deep playoff run, made up for some of the disappointments of the past. Um, I was really looking forward to telling those stories. I was really looking forward to talking more about what guys were experiencing in terms of like being injured and coming back from injury. There's so many stories to be told in that locker room. Honestly, there's so much to talk about besides just wins and losses. And I know some people might say that, I actually got into an argument earlier with someone about Trayvon Diggs, and I'm gonna tell y'all about that in a minute. But they were like, "You're looking at this from a personal perspective," and I was like, "Nah, I'm looking at this from a human perspective. Like this man is a human being." And I didn't like the way that Trayvon was being talked about. But I feel like there are a lot of stories that are unfolding in that locker room that could be explored from a human perspective. You know what I mean? Um, and that's what I was hoping to do. And now I might not get to do it. And it made me kind of sad. And it kind of slowed down my preparation for coming to join y'all live tonight. So my apologies for being later than expected, even though y'all didn't know what time I was going to start. But usually I try to start before midnight. Um, and I almost didn't go live at all. I was texting this person and I was like, I don't even feel like doing it anymore. But one, I know a lot of times my lives will run into this time block. So even if I start before midnight, usually around 12:15, 12:30, we're still going anyway. So I was like, okay, a lot of the people who watch me, or at least some of the people who watch me, are probably still awake. So if I go live, it's not like nobody is going to show up. Um, but then I also saw this post from Stargazer, and when I saw this post, it encouraged me to go ahead and still do the show. And ironically, someone quoted this post and tagged me in it, and they were like, I would love to have your perspective on this. And it was on my list not only to talk about this situation, but to actually talk about the clip that's in this post specifically. Um, and so I'm gonna bring it up and I'm gonna tell y'all why it encouraged me to go live anyway. And we'll talk about it, and then we'll do what we normally do. We'll talk about the stats and the insights and what's going on the field. But this is an off the field thing that I feel like connects to more than just a single situation that it's about. So hopefully y'all don't mind me being a little bit vulnerable with y'all tonight. And I'll share this post with y'all, and then we'll get into the other fun football stuff. So let me bring this up real quick. Let's see. Here it is. All right. So I got the post up. I'm going to pause this, share the screen. All right. So this was a post from John Hayes, who said, I have to go to bed, but would love to hear your take on this. And so this post, I'm going to read what Stargazer wrote first. Actually, no, I'm going to play the clip for y'all first. And then I'm going to read what Stargazer wrote and tell y'all why it resonated with me and why this is what compelled me to go live anyway.
Like, because I've been seeing it, man, kind of like media players taking words and kind of spicing them up a little bit. Always, it just
Mm.
seems like it's more ne- almost negativity, and I'm not talking just this particular situation. I'm talking from other media outlets for organization. It almost seems like your media is painting a worse picture than anybody else out there. You know what I'm saying? Because they basically got the up close look, and they kind of, I kind of seen last night that some of our media staff was saying this is the worst team his chemistry and team morale that they seen
Yeah.
since COVID. But how would they know that if they only in a locker room for an hour throughout the week? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like it's just
Two
weird to me
hours.
that your team's media is like trying to portray an image about you or trying to like throw dirt on your name or throw dirt on your team's name. Like we supposed to be one, we supposed to be together. I know that's journalism and they gotta report what they report, but at the end of the day, you should be trying to protect us, if anything.
Yeah.
Not trying to be buddy buddy with you, smile in your face, trying to talk to you, and
Hmm.
talking about you online. Like, just don't talk to me. Like, we don't gotta talk
Hmm.
at all. Like, I don't need to do interviews with you. You want to ask me something? We can talk on the podcast, and we could figure it out on our own. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Facts.
It's just
Hey,
weird to me.
should we bring one of our media to the podcast?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's do that. Let's do
We gonna set something
that.
like that up.
Okay, so that was the clip. And even when I just watched this section, because I saw that they were doing the interview and I got to watch part of it, but I honestly did not watch the whole thing. But when Trevon Diggs said, that the media should be protecting them and helping them, that definitely impacted me because, like, honestly, Trayvon Diggs is probably one of the hardest people to talk to in the locker room. I talked to him in the locker room one time, and it was after he actually walked off from a group interview with the whole media, and he said something like, stop asking me about receivers. And so a lot of people walked in the locker room after that, walked right past him. And I walked up to him and I was like, well, Trayvon, is there something that you'd rather talk about? And that was genuine interest on my part because I understand how those questions about receivers can get repetitive. I get it, especially when it feels like they're trying to bait you into saying something negative that they can then use for headlines and to paint it like you like have some sort of beef with somebody on another team, or give them like locker room bulletin board material or whatever. So I get that, but I genuinely was like, is there something you'd like to talk about? And I won't dive into his response. It wasn't deep. He left soon after that. But I say that to say when I saw him say like, yeah, they should be protecting us. I'm like, I agree, actually. Um, and one of the things that I was looking forward to was being able to talk to people who have been the subject of so much controversy this weekend. People like him, people like Rico Dowdle, and hopefully getting their side of some of these stories. But what Stargazer said was this. She said, actually, let me pull this back up and reshare this with you guys so y'all can read along in case you're one of those people who likes to read along. Stargazer said, Micah and Trayvon get it. I've told y'all to be careful of the rage bait. We feel that our media is supposed to be for the team, but in reality, that is not the case for the majority. And unfortunately, like, I understand exactly how she feels there. Um, they have been gearing up for a team implosion. Stirring up rage and drama gets clicks and views. It's simple. Clicks and views. This is why you will see specific targeting of players, random posting of a specific player's stats, a constant repeat of a negative narrative, asking coaches and players the same question to see if they can get a different response and paint the team not being on the same page. Strong and bold accusations and statements with no evidence put forward, ignoring of real issues and focusing on the issue that can get the most response. Pay attention. Trayvon is a human. He checked his phone as every person does after they've been away from it for hours. He saw a post targeting him and addressed the situation. These reporters play nice for their media time in the locker room and then make insulting tweets and articles about them. LOL. Some can ignore and some won't. They realize Trey might be quiet, but he's not the one. Maybe some will now think twice about what they say and how they operate and speak about these players and the organization. And I mean, unfortunately, a lot of what she says seems to be true. I remember when the Trayvon thing first started to go viral, somebody texted me and they basically, in so many words, they were like, Mike Leslie is always starting shit. That wasn't their exact words, but that's basically what they were saying. And so I would consider Mike Leslie to be one of the people that Stargazer is talking about here, which might be one of the reasons why Trayvon Diggs responded the way he did. Because I don't know for sure that they haven't had issues before. You know what I'm saying? I'm relatively new in that environment, so I don't know the full history of everything. But I know the person who said that to me, they didn't say it for no reason. You know what I'm saying? Um, so that was one of the reasons why this morning I was actually in a group chat where somebody brought up not only Micah, but also Trayvon. And they were talking, first they started talking about Micah's podcast and how they didn't like it, which I'm just like, so many players have podcasts. Like, can we just get over it? Um, and then they started talking about how Trayvon Diggs is soft. And that really upset me. And no, I don't know Trayvon Diggs that well as a person, but for me, it was just the fact. And I actually talked about this when they were talking about the tours. I talked about the humanity of the players, And I don't know how people look at me whenever I say shit like that, when I start talking about the humanity of the players, because the people I was talking to this morning seemed to think that I was being too personal and that I was encouraging the team to be soft and, just basically saying all kinds of negative things about me because I consider the humanity of the players, which I thought was kind of fucked up. But um basically, like, yeah, the humanity of the players is something that I consider in a lot of these situations. In the case of the tours, that's one of the things that I was saying. I was like, it might not be just the tours that's bothering them. It might be the fact that they're being treated as a commodity, and that's always the focus. They don't have anywhere that they're, like that's their sanctuary. You know what I'm saying? So I get what people are saying when they say a tour shouldn't be used as an excuse for not performing. I agree. But if someone says that they are annoyed by a tour, or the tours are distracting sometimes, or the tours are frustrating, that's reasonable. That's a human response. And I feel like we shouldn't be denigrating these men for being human, especially in a society that, let's be real, this day and age, there are so many people who are like, nobody considers the feelings of men. Men aren't allowed to be human. They're not allowed to express themselves. But then you kind of see why. You have these young men who have the smallest opinion. CD using the phrase sometimes to describe his frustration with the tours. You have Trayvon Diggs, and I may not agree with how he went about things, but I would not use the word soft to describe what he did or what he put on display. And that was really the thing that upset me this morning with the person that I was talking to, that they described Trayvon Diggs as soft and weak. And I just thought he didn't deserve that. But before I dive more into that, I want to make sure we're on the same page about what we're referring to. Patrick Nosey Walker yesterday actually provided a little bit more insight and context into what happened with Trayvon Diggs. And that, like, hearing this version of the story actually made me feel even stronger about the idea that Trayvon Diggs shouldn't be treated like he's quote unquote weak and soft, and that maybe we should consider some of the human elements of this story. So I'm gonna share this and we'll talk about that, and then we'll get to moving. And I'm gonna read some of y'all's comments too. I see y'all leaving comments in the chat. I'm gonna get to those for sure. Where is it?
It's my understanding that he was rightfully concerned about Stefan, right? Because Big Brother down in Houston went down with what might be, knock on wood, hopefully it's not, might be a season-ending knee injury. So an MRI is expected.
Oh, he went down yesterday?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Tough.
So
never freaking
word
happens.
has it, because after that exchange, I started kind of asking around. So word has it is that's why Trayvon made a beeline to his phone. He was checking for texts to make sure, to see what the status of Big Brother was. And in doing so, he was greeted by some screenshots. So he didn't.
So somebody went to him.
He didn't go to
I figured that could be
so
a possibility.
He didn't go to Twitter. He picked up the phone with the intent of checking on the latest on Stefan. And then, his circle had already sent him some screenshots while
that's a problem in its own right.
And then he came back out. That's why he came out so quickly, because and started looking for Mike.
It was quick.
Right?
It's good
perspective.
So thank you for that.
There's the context of that. That being said, go back and look at the play, and Trayvon had nothing to do with what happened in that play. So the question that Mike warranted so the question that Mike Leslie asked. So let's because we objectively analyze. Let's do objective analysis. If you go and look down at if you go look at that play, Trayvon was in man coverage, and Trayvon was sticky on the hip of his assignment. Okay, Kittle was not Trayvon's assignment.
No, he was not.
Okay. Who was trailing?
So Trayvon did his job.
Trayvon did his job.
And then he helped
Donovan
else's job.
Right. Kittle was Donovan Wilson's assignment. Kittle came free on the crosser. That's why Donald was in pursuit the whole time. Now, once Kittle got that ball, Trayvon peeled off of his guy. But when he peeled off of his guy, Malik Hooker was already 100 miles an hour with the angle. Yep. So Trayvon slow played it just in case Kittle cut back inside. Yep. And then when he didn't, he said, okay, I'm going to make this tough.
It's like a center fielder backing up a second baseman.
So that's why, objectively speaking, that's why Trayvon was so upset. And that's why he kept saying, up from that play, that's what you took away?
Yeah.
That's what you took away from the play? Because of all the things that went wrong on that chunk play, it wasn't Trayvon.
Yeah,
it wasn't Trayvon. So
I love the context. I really do, because sticking with the same energy, what I had a problem with was getting on Twitter, following a loss before you even take off.
So yeah, what Kyle is saying there is an issue that a lot of people actually had. And I can understand people not liking that, but I also feel like these players' post-game rituals is not really any of our business like that. But there are two main things that I want people to get from that clip that I just played. One, Mike Leslie was wrong. And as much as he tries to say he was just asking a question and gave Trayvon the opportunity to respond, that's not how you ask a question when you're genuinely confused. As someone who is still getting used to watching film and who is still getting used to watching the game from an X's and O's perspective, if I really don't understand what's happening, but it's not my goal to make a player look bad, I'm going to DM somebody. I'm going to text somebody. I'm going to be like, hey, was he supposed to do that there? What's going on? What I'm not going to do is take a clip and present it in a way that makes it seem like this guy isn't doing his job when he's actually been doing a really good job all game. And let's be real, after the Lions game, Trayvon Diggs took a lot of heat. A lot of people were saying, oh, he's scared to tackle. He's making business decisions. And even then, I said, yo, Trayvon Diggs has never had the best tackling technique, but he's not shying away from contact. He's not scared of contact. He's going full force into contact. He's not bringing guys to the ground. And there are a lot of games where we don't notice because the way he acts as a speed bump, or he'll hit a guy and make them fall, it's effective. So while we might notice that Trayvon Diggs doesn't tackle well, and people will point that out, it doesn't always impact the game in a way until you play a team like the Detroit Lions, where that method of bringing a guy to the ground just does not work. And then it becomes a lot more obvious. But you could tell in this game, Trayvon stepped up. He was doing a lot better job of trying to tackle better, actually bring guys to the ground, not just hit them and hope they fall. It was apparent. He was doing a much better job of being in the right place at the right time. And what he did in that particular play is something that I've seen him do before. As a matter of fact, when someone texted me about it, I was like, well, Trayvon Diggs was trying to anticipate movement, which he does all the time. So I can understand someone asking that question, but he didn't have to ask it like that. And what I was saying was, you can kind of think of this almost like if you've ever tried to play tag with a really instinctive dog. Like I had a pit bull for a while that like we would chase each other around the yard. Or if you have like a really playful toddler, like, then you know you're not always going to be going full speed all the time. Sometimes you're going to like slow down and try to guess which way they're going to go, and then you'll speed back up, or something like that. That's what I saw Trayvon Diggs doing in that moment and also in other moments. So it's not like he was slowing down because he wasn't giving his 100% effort. He was trying to make sure that he didn't go 100% in the wrong direction. He was trying to make sure that once he committed to a certain trajectory, a certain velocity, that he was going in the right way to catch the person that he was trying to catch. He was on his assignment and he was trying to help with something else that was happening. And he did, And so while had it been me in that situation, I might have gone about it a different way. I feel like rather than confronting Mike Leslie in the hallway, which is essentially on the enemy's turf, cameras and mics everywhere, they can edit whatever happens there, whatever the interaction is, they can edit it however many which ways they want to. I thought it would have been funny had he just not said anything to the dude, but then just done like a film breakdown later to show how dumb this guy really is. Because essentially that's what Trayvon Diggs was saying. He's like, yo, you don't know ball. And he was right about that. He was like, yo, if that's what you got from that, you don't know ball. Like, how hilarious would it have been had Trayvon Diggs just popped up with a video of him explaining what happened on that play and why asking the question, what is Trayvon Diggs doing here? Why that's a dumb question. Like, yo, dude, it's your job to know what I'm doing here. Like, you're the analyst. You're the one covering this team. You don't know what man coverage is. That would have cracked up a lot of people, right? But it sounds like because of events that happened during the day, maybe even some carried over frustration from the week before. We don't know what kind of trash talk was happening on the field. We don't know what kind of feelings were brought up by Trayvon Diggs' brother being injured. Sounds like he was emotional and he reacted in a very rash manner. So no, I don't necessarily approve of how he went about it, but I understand it. And that's all I'm saying, is to just understand these guys a little bit. And so, like, the conversation that I had earlier that I was telling y'all about, I was working, and then it just came up in a group chat that I was in, and I don't know, it's one of those situations where maybe I was already having a bad day and that's why I got so upset, but it really just hurt me to see other men talk about a clearly frustrated man that way. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, he's a human being. Like, y'all don't know what it's like to be frustrated. Y'all don't know what it's like to be like, I'll be damned if somebody gonna talk about me like that. Y'all don't know how that feels. Like, y'all don't know what it's like to get a temper and react too quickly and regret it later. Because something else that I said, I was just like, yeah, Trayvon Diggs went on Micah's show, but honestly, that's probably the last time he'll bring it up. Like, if it's still being talked about this week, it's because we're talking about it. And even in the chat, they were like, why, like, we should be talking about what's happening on the field. We shouldn't even be talking about this. And I'm like, we don't have to talk about this. Like, that's a choice. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It was just really weird to me. And you know, I hate that I and some other people who I know do actually care won't get the opportunity to have some important conversations about this, to try to present it in the proper light to the people who watch us. You know, it's upsetting, it's hurtful. Maybe we'll get to do something about it later. I don't know. Let me look at some of y'all's comments. We're almost 30 minutes in, and I have not responded to what y'all are saying. And I know y'all are mostly talking ball in the chat. I can, from the skimming I've done, I can tell that much. Clement says, before we talked about the soft boys, see you using that S word. That's not nice, Clement. Shout out to the Colorado Buffaloes. Coach Prime, Shedeur, and Travis as a team is now bowl eligible at 6-2, and they are top of the Big 12 conference. I really am proud of the Buffaloes. The Buffaloes, the Sanders family, they are another example of what the media will do sometimes, and it's becoming increasingly common. I feel like the reason it's becoming common is because there's so many media outlets, and it's like a cash grab. You know, if you're not in it just to tell the story because you're passionate, you're trying to get clicks, you're trying to get views, because whether it's a blog or a social media account, that engagement equates to dollars, which is what everybody's chasing, right? And one of the things I said the other night, I was like, it's so interesting to me that when Shedeur Sanders was accused of dragging his O-line under the bus, which he didn't, for anyone who actually watched that press conference, his words were taken way out of context. And some of those articles were like 2 syllables away from outright lying on that man, right? But when that was the narrative, that, oh, Shedeur Sanders dragged his O-line under the bus, everybody was talking about it. There were posts, there were headlines everywhere. After this game, Shedeur gave glowing compliments to his O-line, said they had a flawless game, loved what they did. And if you watch the game, you know they did an incredible job. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about the fact that Shedeur Sanders has a better O-line, that he's performing better because of his O-line, and that they actually have a really good relationship, and he's being a good leader for the team. You don't hear nothing. It's crazy. Just the gravitation towards negativity. And what else is crazy to me? What else is crazy to me is when some of the people who are actually the biggest purveyors of the negativity, like the people who love going on their particular platforms and twisting words and creating headlines to make stuff look worse than what it is, and then they're the ones talking about, oh, I like, just everything's so negative. And, you know, I just don't understand these players, and I don't understand what's their problem and why are they so soft. And it's like, because you're creating a toxic environment. Like, what? You're a big part of this. Stop it. So Clement also said most of us in the fan base are now at the acceptance stage of how the Cowboys aren't a good team at all and won't be as long as Jerry Jones is the owner of this team. One thing I will say about that from my perspective is that I am in the acceptance phase of that they are not having a good season. They're like, if you listen to me talk before this week, pretty much every week, I come up with something to say, well, if the Cowboys do this, if they improve in this way, if they can fix this error, because last season they were good at this and now they're not. So if they can just revert back to that, they can compete with this team. You won't be hearing that from me. Because that, like, I'm all out of hopium at this point. So you won't be hearing that from me. But I do know statistically, is it possible for them to turn things around? Absolutely. Is it possible for them to have better practices and implement something? Yeah. But it's hard for me at this point to believe that it's likely. So many things would have to change for the Cowboys to get back on track. I'm just like, is it? And I'm not even just talking about during the games, right? Because we've talked about the statistics related to what's going wrong. If you watch me, then I know that you watch other content creators. So you've seen discussions about the lack of at-snap motion and how that's impacting what the team does. If you've watched the games, you've seen how basic a lot of these plays are. A lot of these times where it's like literally 4 receivers all running curls and comeback routes. Somebody referred to Brandon Cooks as the hitch god on Twitter. I think it was Jay Tuck. Like y'all know. So y'all know. So many things would have to change for the Cowboys to be different or to get different results. So not only that, the things that I just mentioned, but even when you listen to the press conferences of Mike McCarthy and of the coordinators, and you hear them make reference to, oh, we need to improve communication, we need to practice better, oh, we need to get back to fundamentals. I'm like, we're going into week 9, and we're talking about communication and fundamentals. Come on. And it's like so many things. And I'm sorry, I'm going like all out of order. I feel like this is just a stream of consciousness show tonight. So y'all bear with me. But I just feel like there are so many things that like Mike McCarthy says. And I'm like, okay, I get that. But you should have known that already. Like when he was talking about how the protection issues affected the way that he called the game against the 49ers. Okay, I get that. But it's not like this is the first week that the Cowboys have had protection issues of Dak Prescott on offense. At this point, you should plan for that. At this point, you should spend the days during the week figuring out what you can do to still have a creative offense, or as creative as possible, despite the protection issues. Or at least explain to me how protection issues mean that you don't have at-snap motion. Like, make it make sense. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, while that might be true, protection issues might limit what you can do. But once again, we're going into week 9 now. Those protection issues have been there. By now, you should have a plan for that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, just stuff like that just doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't fly, And same thing with them talking about communication and needing to go over fundamentals. I'm like, don't y'all... I know they go over fundamentals at least once a week, because even though we don't get to see all of practice, that's something that Mike McCarthy would always talk about, is that's something that they're doing in practice. So I'm just like, they would have to change their practices. They would have to change the play calling. And it's very possible that there are things about the culture that might have to be changed too. One of the things about sports, about competition, and specifically about contact sports is high performance is not always healthy. And that's physically and mentally. From a physical standpoint, what I mean is, for example, I played roller derby, right? And while it was important for me to be healthy in terms of cardiovascular health, taking care of my body, making sure I was, getting massages, doing proper warm-ups, proper cool downs, stretching when I needed to, keeping the blood flow going, all that, right? So all that was important. But also, there's nothing healthy about putting on skates and running full speed into an opponent, right? or even the way that we would challenge ourselves to skate as many laps as possible in 5 minutes. I need cardiovascular health to do that, but it's not healthy in the sense that if somebody came to me, like a Gen Pop person, by Gen Pop, I mean a non-athlete, if somebody came to me and said, I want to get in shape, I wouldn't recommend that. That was us pushing ourselves to the limit. And anytime you go to an extreme of anything, you're talking about something outside the realm of health. So to be fit to play roller derby meant going beyond what would be considered healthy. It meant pushing ourselves to a point that maybe wasn't necessarily healthy. It meant pushing ourselves to a point where maybe there was a little bit of risk in terms of our energy systems, in terms of the physical stress that we put our bodies through hitting each other, right? Same thing can be said for football. Hitting each other, not healthy. Pushing yourself to the limit physically to see how well you can perform, not healthy. And then same thing from a mental standpoint. Almost any high performing athlete that you hear talk about the mindset that they bring to their sport, there's a note of obsession. There's a kind of a hint of having a chip on your shoulder constantly, keeping receipts because maybe you're a person the haters drive you. That was a thing that both Michael Jordan and Kobe did. Kobe, he did 2 series with the Mamba puppet. One of them was called a Dark Muse Cage. I think if you go to YouTube and you look up Kobe Bryant Dark Muse Cage, you'll see a clip of what he did. But it was a whole video where he literally talked about how negativity from people, he used it to motivate him. And most people would say that's not healthy. Most people would say it's healthier to learn to let things go and process things and have work-life balance. Kobe Bryant was not about work-life balance. Michael Jordan, even Serena Williams, she talked about some of the unhealthy aspects of her mindset when mental health was such a big thing during the Olympics a few years ago. But although those things weren't considered healthy, they are what drove all of those people to becoming champions, right? And so I say all this to say, from a cultural standpoint, one of the things that we hear Mike McCarthy talk about a lot is just, balance for the players and taking their health into consideration. And so one thing about the stats that they get through the GPS system is like, there's no right or wrong way to use them, So is it possible that they're possibly stopping these guys before they get to the limit that would be considered pushing it, so that these guys don't always necessarily get to experience what it's like to try to push past their limits, which is something that you have to do occasionally in order to increase your limit, right? If you always go to what's considered a safe zone and that's where you stop, you'll never go past that. You literally have to push yourself past that in order to get your body used to it so that you can have the ability to perform at that level and beyond over time, right? That, and you can also tell that Mike McCarthy cares a lot about the mental health of his players and their balance. Is it possible to care too much? No. But is it possible to care in a way that maybe discourages them from having that level of obsession that's important for high performing athletes in order for them to get that edge over their competition? Maybe. And these are literally questions that I'm posing based on things that we've heard Mike McCarthy said and how he talks about his role as a coach of the team. And these are the questions that I ponder when I say, I wonder if culturally there might be some things that they need to change too. So I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm not saying that Mike McCarthy is a bad coach, but what I'm saying is he is a coach that cares. And sometimes coaches who care, they show that in a way that causes guys to kind of back off from doing some of the things and pushing themselves in the same ways that their competitors might. That's all I'm saying. It's a possibility, is all I'm saying. So let me keep going through y'all's comments. So Willie said Cowboys fans don't need to go to any more games this year. Oh no. Mills, always the optimist, said health is on the way. It is indeed. We just don't know when. We have no idea when Micah Parsons or Deron Bland will be back. No scheme, Splinter Poppy. These names you be coming up with are hilarious. Says, what's up? Thanks for joining. Mills said, it's like that right now. They think they're more famous than the players performing. I think you said that when I was talking about the media. We'll get back to that in a second. Clement says Dak needs help. Also said, we've talked about having to be physical on the offensive and defensive line, and that we need a power running back and a couple of DTs that can stop the run. But Jerry Jones refuses to address these areas of need, which was evident against playoff teams last season, and it has continued this season. Not wrong there. Like I literally have nothing to add to that. And we've seen people in those units try, right? We've seen our running back room show signs of hope. We've seen our defensive tackle show signs of hope, but I definitely do think that it would help if there were some, personnel changes made, at least, for the sake of depth, and I said that for a reason too. There's some statistics that we're going to get to in a minute that will explain why I mentioned depth specifically. Mills said, folks thought he went straight to Twitter after the game. SMH crucified him. Yes, they did think that. And so while we're back on this topic, though, let me add something to this, because what happens to me a lot, right, is that a story like this will come out. Like, oh, this person did this. And people will be so quick to offer their opinion and offer their take. And I'll usually stop and try to look at things from different angles. Like, well, what if it wasn't that? Like, what if we got it wrong? And there have been occasions where I take heat for that, where people are like, oh, you're being soft, or oh, you always trying to come up with excuses. You're always trying to make excuses for these guys. And I'm just like, nah, like it's been my experience as a human being that like I've been misunderstood, and so maybe that's where it comes from. When I see people do things that just don't make sense, like to me, and I get it. People are like, oh, this generation of players are obsessed with social media. I get that. Everybody has a platform, and I gotta be real. Let's be real. If Twitter and Instagram and TikTok existed in the mid-90s, you mean to tell me none of those players would have had a social media account? If podcasting was a thing, you don't think any of those players, with the egos that they had and the stuff that they were pulling, like they were having orgies and they were having orgies and cocaine parties in the White House. You don't think they might have taken some risque pictures or gone on a podcast and gone off? And it's just like, they weren't in a position to do it. And so everybody tries to romanticize these guys and pretend like they would have never done that. We don't know that. But if you look at the character of those guys and you really think about what would they do if they had access to these things in the mid-90s, it's not hard to imagine that some of them would have had a podcast or worse. Hell, some of them would have had an OnlyFans if we're being real. So like, I just hate the comparison. And the only reason why the comparison works and why people get away with it so often is because those guys won Super Bowls. And so it's so easy to imagine that they would just be so much more focused and so much more disciplined. And I'm like, if this rendition of the Dallas Cowboys is having coke-fueled orgies, we haven't heard about it. You know what I'm saying? So I hate the comparisons. But anyway, as a person who has been on occasion misunderstood, where I do something that to me is completely normal and I don't even realize that other people are looking at it a certain way. And then by the time that I find out people are looking at me sideways, so many people have already passed judgment and there are so many rumors being spread. And that shit sucks. I hate it. And so that's why when I hear about stuff like what I heard about Trayvon Diggs, I try not to jump to conclusions, because like that doesn't even seem like his style. To check Twitter eventually, yes. But to be like, I'm not even going to take my pads off. First thing I'm going to do is check Twitter and then go out in the hall and confront this dude. I was like, nah, there's got to be more to the story, because that don't even make sense. He's never done anything like that. Even the couple times I've seen him clap back at the media, it was like under his breath walking off. Like for him to cause this much of a commotion and to do it in that moment, there's more to this, and that is something that I've applied to several players in several situations. So yeah, I don't know. People can say I'm making excuses or I'm being too personal Like, God forbid that I have a personal stance with people I've met in real life and actually try to present a perspective related to what I've learned about these people. Like, what the hell am I thinking? How dare I? Oh, goodness. Willie says, Jazz, Jerry created this culture and he won't change his approach. Willie, I do think you have a point there. And that's part of why I titled this episode Follow the Leader. Because while I don't necessarily agree on what everybody thinks the issues are, like when people try to say that Micah shouldn't have a podcast, for example, I'm like, there's so many players across the league that have a podcast, and it's not being used as an excuse in any case. And that was actually even something else that came up about Trayvon Diggs. They were like, the time he spent on that podcast, he should have been watching film or getting some more reps in. And I'm just like, well, what if he already watched film? What if he already got reps in and he decided to take a few minutes out of his day to address something that was bothering him? Is that so terrible? It's not like he spent the whole day on this podcast. The podcast is what, an hour, if that? So you mean to tell me that a man can't be like, you know what? I'm done with my work for the day. I'm going to, and let's be real. The reason why he did it on Micah's podcast is because Micah is his friend. So I didn't see two men trying to capitalize off drama and mess. What I saw was a man who was clearly bothered by his name being dragged through the mud in a way that he felt was unfair. Like, he obviously felt like the story that was being presented was untrue, which if everybody's saying, oh, he got off the field and went straight to Twitter, the team is so distracted, this is why they can't win. And he's like, that's not what happened, right? So obviously he felt a way about people lying on his name, and he went to his friend who has a platform that allows him to tell his side of the story. Like, that's what I saw. I saw a friend helping a frustrated friend using his platform. And I'm just like, yeah, you can dislike it. You can say they should do things a different way. But I think using words like soft and weak is just going overboard. It was a very human moment for both of them. C says Jimmy would have allowed none of that. What are you talking about? A lot of that stuff happened while Jimmy Johnson was head coach. That's the era that had the White House. So yeah, I don't know if you mean Jimmy wouldn't have allowed them to have podcasts. Now, what Jimmy Johnson's stance would have been, that might be a little bit more in question, right? But as far as what would players be doing or trying to do, yes, they would be trying to capitalize, especially if they knew that they were that popular and they could get paid for tweets, they could get paid for going on a podcast. Hell yeah, they would have done it. Some of them are doing it now. And I get it. They're not playing anymore. But like, I don't know. We got to just stop acting like they were so much better, so much different. They were young men just like these young men are young men now. You know, it's wild. Speaking of, there's some information that I was waiting on. I'm trying to see if it came through, because if it did, we might have something else to throw in this episode. If it didn't, well, if y'all see me go live in the morning, just know something came through that's really good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that into the mic. My allergies are getting the best of me and the air is dry. Okay, I gotta search for this all over again. Sorry. Or sign in, I should say. Mill said Irvin and Dion would have went crazy on Twitter/X. I agree. Deion Sanders is currently a coach, and he posts on Twitter multiple times. He put out a whole music video. Are y'all forgetting this man went on SNL? Like, he went on Saturday Night Live. He had a whole music video called Must Be the Money, which had the women in the video were what would be the equivalent of Instagram models today. And yes, he put out a whole music video that ended up being on BET or whatever. But if Instagram and TikTok existed back then and YouTube existed back then, he would have been on an independent label putting that video on YouTube. It's like people talk about like, oh, these football players these days, they just want to be rappers. Deion Sanders must be the money. Look it up. It's not even like he made the song and it was a joke. This was a fully produced music video with casted models, other players in the video. You could tell it was a decent budget. What else was he in? Was it Deion Sanders who was also in that MC Hammer video? I think it was in the MC Hammer video. Yeah. Wow. Clement says Jerry won't make any moves at the trade deadline because he quote unquote likes his team and that we're getting injured players back like it is a new signing. I don't understand a lot about what Jerry Jones has said. Damn it. The information still isn't here. Oh, I can't wait to share this with y'all. So yeah, if I go live tomorrow, just know I got some information. But even beyond what Jerry Jones has said about personnel, some of what he said about what should be happening on the field is definitely head scratching. I think it was last week. He said something about how the wide receivers need to be better at like running through contact, but he was talking about them getting open. And I'm like, why would you want your receivers to have to fight to get open and risk offensive pass interference and all that when we could just scheme them open like other teams, you know? So when he says stuff like that, it's just kind of odd to me. He said something else this week that I was just like, huh? I know when it comes to Dak Prescott not running, that's definitely a head scratcher because I get it. Pay a quarterback $60 million, you don't want them to get hurt. However, if you pay a quarterback $60 million, you should also want the team to win. And it's not like we need Dak Prescott to run on every play. Literally 1 or 2 well-timed runs in each of the last several games could have made a difference because it's about when he does it. It's not like you need it to be like part of the like the first 15 script or whatever. But you know, there have been some drives where it's like, okay, had he run the ball, we could have gotten another first down. There could have been more points scored. You know what I'm saying? I don't think anybody's looking for him to like, you know, compete with the running backs for carries, but you know, 1 or 2 more runs per game, I could see that making a difference. That's all. You know, and especially in a situation where it's like the actual run game is not necessarily doing what it needs to do. Now, who knows what would have happened had Rico been available this past Sunday? Oof, that's a whole nother story. The conspiracy theories around that, y'all, somebody called it Jerry-itis. Somebody said Rico Dowdle came down with Jerry-itis. Y'all are wild. But like the running game isn't doing what they're supposed to. Mike McCarthy has admitted that there are protection issues. It's just there are so many issues with the offense operating the way that it needs to. I don't understand the problem with saying, hey, it's an option for the quarterback to pick it up and run with it. You know, Willie said, that's not good enough. They need help. They need more groceries. And Clement emphatically agrees, saying, what's that saying? You don't prepare to succeed, you prepare to fail. Facts. Okay, let's get into some of the insights from this past week. So there's only a few. And do I have anything that I can share with y'all? I didn't pull up any specific plays, but I'm going to just let some plays of CeeDee Lamb run while I'm sharing these insights because I felt like he did particularly well. Is it this one? Nope, it's not that one. Is it this one? No. Is it this one? I think it's this one. Okay, so y'all can just watch that while I'm reading these insights. So these are some of the statistical insights from the Cowboys versus 49ers. So first one says CeeDee Lamb caught 13 of his 17 targets for 146 yards on 2 touchdowns in week 8 against the 49ers, recording a 48.6% target rate, the highest of his career. Lamb took advantage of blown coverages in the contest, catching all 8 of his targets with more than 3 yards of separation for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lamb also caught 7 of his 8 targets when aligned out wide on Sunday night, totaling 59 yards and both of his touchdowns. Lamb has now amassed 376 receiving yards from an outside alignment this season, generating plus 130 receiving yards over expected, which is the 4th most in the NFL entering Monday Night Football. So this is yet another statistic where CeeDee Lamb is performing above what's expected. So in other words, you have these statisticians who look at the performance of CeeDee Lamb in the past, what he's good at, what he's not good at, what he usually does in certain situations. And they're like, yeah, we should expect this from him. And I feel like there's been about 3 or 4 categories so far that he's gone above and beyond, and not by a little bit. It's usually by like 100 plus yards or so that he's outperforming what people even expected from him this season, which is further support for what I always say about CeeDee Lamb, which is that every single offseason he goes and puts in work and gets tangibly better. And so this is yet another way that he's done that. So when it comes to his role on the offense, maybe the production isn't there because the production, it relies on more than just him. The production relies on what Dak Prescott does, what the offensive line is doing, what other people are doing, and if they're able to pull some coverage off of him with the threat of what they might do, which I didn't see a lot of that. I think I saw, and let me say I didn't see a lot of that because I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been able to watch this entire game yet. I'm still working on watching film, and I'm still working on making time to watch film. But I do remember seeing at least one play where Jalen Tolbert's movement before the snap got, who was on him? I think it was Fred Warner. It got Fred Warner to move out a little bit wider, right? So I feel like and I've said this before, as more guys get involved with the offense and present themselves as a legitimate threat, they'll be able to use stuff like that more, you know? But in the meantime, CeeDee Lamb, he's performing, he's showing up, you know? The next insight says, well, this is about George Kittle. He had a season high 128 receiving yards on 6 receptions, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to talk about that. And actually for this one, let me see if I can bring up some film of Tyler Guyton. I felt like Tyler Guyton did well. Not perfect by any means, but I think he improved since the last time we saw him on the field. And he definitely did some things that were good. But I think a lot of people, when they thought about the concerns for the offense going into this game, a lot of people were concerned about Tyler Guyton and what if Nick Bosa decided to pick on him? Or, you know, what if he reverted back to some of the same issues that he was having pre-injury? Like, would he actually improve enough to help on the O-line? And he's getting better. He's getting there. Not perfect by any means. So, like, as you can see there, in that rep that just happened, that was another example of what a lot of defensive players have been starting to do to Tyler Guyton now that they know that it works, which is basically try to attack his inside and hope that he either like turns or tabletops or just can't catch them. But like they're going to his inside a lot because that started working on a pretty regular basis. And although it wasn't perfect in this game, he did do a better job of stopping guys who were doing that to him, who were either lining up on his inside or trying to take advantage of him on the inside. So you see that guy leans towards his inside as well for good reason. You know, that guy was still trying to get to Dak, but I'm just saying it was becoming more and more common. Like a lot of times you'll see guys try to go the outside of the tackle, and I forget what they call it. There's a word for that, and the terminology, I'm still working on that too. But basically they'll try to bend around the outside of the tackle sometimes. But what you started seeing with Tyler Guyton, because it was becoming so successful, was just them constantly attacking the right side of his body or the space to his right side, you know? And he did somewhat of a better job at handling that. He did somewhat of a better job at protecting Dak Prescott. So shout out to him. But here's the insight related to all that. And it's more so about Nick Bosa, but it said Nick Bosa generated 5 pressures and 1 sack on 38 pass rushes, including a turnover caused by pressure on a Dak Prescott interception in the first quarter. Bosa primarily aligned as the left edge, matching up against right tackle Terrence Steele on 26 pass rushes. So you got 4 pressures, 1 sack, all on one-on-one matchups against Steele. Bosa did not record a pass rush as the right edge until the fourth quarter, where he generated 1 pressure across 6 one-on-one matchups against left tackle Tyler Guyton. So it was about the same rate if you split things up mathematically, but I'm inclined to believe that if they felt like Tyler Guyton was the easier target and that Nick Bosa could get to Dak Prescott on practically every snap by targeting Tyler Guyton, I feel like they would have done it, you know? So shout out to Tyler Guyton for holding his own, for improving, for putting in the work. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that as the season goes on. I said a couple of times last week, I said there have been some Cowboys players who come in and after a few seasons, they are so good at what they do. They're so good in their role that you forget they even had struggles their rookie season. And I believe Tyler Guyton is going to be one of those guys. So, I mean, of course, time will still tell, but I feel like he's doing the right things. He's moving in the right direction. I think it's okay to hope for that from him. But yeah, they're absolutely I think Jalen Tolbert's going to be one of those guys. I think he's going to be one of those guys who's able to make such a big impact on the team that there are a lot of things from his rookie season that people are going to forget. And same thing with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb had a lot of issues his rookie season. He got talked about bad his rookie season. And now he's literally acknowledged as one of the best wide receivers in the league, you know? So, I mean, sometimes people, they have trouble their rookie year. It's a common thing. It happens. But I don't think that's a reason to automatically call someone a bust in their first year or just lose all hope. It just means like, hey, these growing pains are real. You're gonna have to give them time. Okay, let's see what else we got. There's a George Kittle stat. We don't need to talk about him anymore. There's a Dak Prescott stat. It says, after generating plus 27.3 EPA and throwing for 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in 2 matchups against the 49ers in week 4, 2016 and week 7, 2017, Dak Prescott has recorded negative 35.3 EPA, 3 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions in 3 matchups since then. His negative 35.3 EPA against the 49ers is his fewest against any team since 2021, including the playoffs. In last year's Week 5 matchup, Prescott threw 3 interceptions against the 49ers zone coverage, his most in a single game since at least 2018. Bananas. Now, some people are saying Dak Prescott has regressed. I don't know about that. And I say that because, and let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. This was a stat that was actually released before the game. Zach Martin has allowed his highest pressure rate, 6.9%, sack rate, 1.5%, and quick pressure rate, 2.6%, since at least 2018 this season. So we're seeing the worst version of Zach Martin that we've seen in like 6 years, is what these numbers are telling us. Martin has faced his highest rate of one-on-one blocks, 57.1%, and has already tied his most one-on-one sacks allowed with 3 since 2018. So even without those numbers, I'm sure there are a lot of people, and I've seen people talk about it, who have noticed that Zach Martin just, not only does he seem like he's lost a step, he's looking kind of awful at times. And so when you consider that the right tackle has had his struggles, the left tackle has had his struggles, Zach Martin, who you can normally depend on, has also had his struggles. Of course, Dak Prescott is going to struggle. I haven't looked at it as much during the 49ers game. There were a couple of moments where I saw his footwork was a little bit off, but during the Lions game, it was awful. Like, he could barely step into a throw. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when you can't step into your throws, when you have trouble climbing the pocket, when you don't trust your protection enough to climb the pocket, with all this is going on, yeah, it's going to affect your accuracy. So could Dak Prescott be regressing? It's possible, but it would be easier to determine that, one, if he had better protection, two, if he had a run game, because something else that's true about Dak Prescott statistically, and I gotta find it. I feel like it's somewhere in this notebook, but I remember talking to y'all about this at the beginning of the season, that statistically the win-loss records of Dak Prescott are drastically different when he has an adequate run game. When he doesn't, he tends to lose way more games. But the games that he's won are ones where he has had an adequate run game. And he's only had anything close to an adequate run game in 2 games this season. So it's like, there's a lot working against that. And now if you want to observe what he's doing and be like, he's regressed because even though his protection is having these issues, the footwork is on him and it's not right. And so that's what's going on. And then the decision making, by his own admission, his decision making has been bad. I know people might have their debates about the first interception during the 49ers game, but that second one, pretty much everyone, including Dak Prescott, was like, yo, that was dumb as hell. What were you even doing there? So yeah, if you want to point to things like his footwork and his decision making, or anything else related to the team that he's directly in charge of, and you want to be like, you know what, to me, I look at these things and I say Dak Prescott has regressed. I'm not going to argue with you on that. I'm not caping for him so hard that I'm just like, no, don't say that. I'm just saying that it's more than that. There's more going on than Dak Prescott regressed, and now the Cowboys offense is unproductive. There are other factors at play here, is my point. So yeah, footwork needs work, decision making needs work, but his protection needs work, the run game needs work, the scheme needs work. Like, I mean, the 4 vertical routes is something that I definitely associated with Kellen Moore. And now that we're seeing it so much and Kellen Moore is not here, I'm almost like, were we blaming the wrong person this whole time? I don't know. And I get it. Like, where Kellen Moore is with the Eagles, he's got weapons that he didn't have here. Cowboys did not have a Saquon Barkley, so that makes sense. But he's doing a lot with, I don't want to say a lot with a little, because they're not quite a little, but considering how Jalen Hurts looks, Kellen Moore is able to get a lot done with that offense, considering that Jalen Hurts doesn't exactly look like a stellar quarterback this season, right? And so you look at that, look at what's going on with the Cowboys, and I feel like anybody who's being fair to the situation, you do kind of have to look at it and be like, was it Mike McCarthy the whole time? Like, was it Agatha all along? Was it Mike McCarthy all along? Right? I feel like you have to at least ask the question. You have to at least be willing to examine that. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, we're going to stop sharing that. Now, some of the other stuff that I wanted to look at was some of the stuff that was shared by John Oney. I'm going to look at some of y'all's comments first, though. Clement says, Terrence still needs to do a better job of using his hands. Yes. His hand placement was not good, especially his outside hand. And actually, that's something that John Oney talks about. And his footwork is not good either. Thank you, Clement. Clement always has like some good insight. Mills says, yeah, our right side on the O-line needs to wake up. People expected a lot better from Terrence still. They really did. Clement said, Dak did cost us the game with his 2 interceptions. Hey, that's fair. The first one was him being hit. True. But still shouldn't have threw the pass in double coverage. Fair. And the second interception, the DB baited him to throw it. Yeah. And he fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. It was awful. But I think that's what happens when you start pressing. And that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. I'm just adding a little bit more context to the situation. Some of the other factors that we mentioned put them in a position to where I think he's been pressing a little bit. And someone asked Schottenheimer about it. And Schottenheimer said he's not. but I think he is sometimes. You see decisions like that and you're like, okay, if he's not pressing them, what the hell was that? So yeah. Willie says, Jazz, this offensive line is pathetic. Y'all are so mean. They can't block you. And you're sexy as always, just saying. Thank you, Willie. I appreciate it. I didn't know that statement ended like that, y'all. I was just reading it. Drell says, when he said he was retiring after the season, he meant now. Talking about Zach Martin, I'm sure. I have no rebuttal for that because he does. It's like when you think about like, have you ever been to, like, when you think about seniors in high school, like when they talk about senioritis and how they'll start to kind of like slack off on their work a little bit when they know they've done enough to graduate and they're just like, yeah, I'm done here. It does kind of feel like that, only we're in the middle of the season, Zach. I don't know what's going on with him. Like, I have no words. There's no explanation for what we're seeing from Zach Martin. Clement's statement continued. The DB baited him to throw it to CeeDee Lamb on the sideline, and he didn't read the zone coverage with the safety coming over. This is facts. That should have been a throwaway and move on to the next down. Yeah. But I think he's trying to force it because there are so many situations where they could have done something to, I guess, impact the defense, stress the defense. I was watching Skywalker Still in the Morning, and he was talking about one of the instances where they were in single high and how had they done something besides 4 vertical routes, or I think it was like 3 vertical routes and a whip route, whatever. But had they done something different, had they gotten a little bit more creative and used the players more in a way that made sense, that it could have actually opened up an area for them to attack. And then I was also reading some stat about attacking the middle of the field against the 49ers and how that can be effective. And I felt like they didn't do that enough either. So that's what I mean whenever I say like he's pressing because of the situation that he's been put in. Is that an excuse? No, I'm being very clear about that. It's not an excuse. I'm just adding further context to the conversation. Like, Dak Prescott is not just out here randomly pressing. He's been put in a situation where I think he feels like that's what he has to do. And when it comes to him running, if Jerry Jones goes on the radio and basically says he doesn't want Dak Prescott running, I don't know what those conversations are sounding like behind closed doors. So I don't know. But it just feels like it doesn't feel like Dak has turned trash. Dak, his play feels desperate to me. Like, that's the vibe that I get when I watch his movement, when I look at his decision making, when I watch his body language and his expressions. He comes off as desperate. He comes off as someone who wants to make something happen, but he's limited in his options. So that's just what I'm reading. Willie says, Jazz, Dak is better when they have a run game, which sets up play action. You're right. But there were some stats that were really specific about it. So yeah, generally speaking, that's why the run game is important, especially for Dak. And especially considering that, you know, they do so much out of shotgun, right? But there were some stats that actually broke down his win-loss record when the run game had over 35 carries total and over 100 yards. I got to find it because I think about it every week and I never go back and look it up, but I got to find it because I do remember talking to y'all about that, but I don't have it in a place that's easily accessible and I'd be forgetting. Mills says, I think we are putting up smoke screens to save our best plays for later. Mills, if they don't get it together, ain't gonna be no damn later. I can see you saying something like that in like week 2. We are going on week 9, sir. That's why I be saying Mills is an optimist. Y'all, Mills, he's them stars in the building on Twitter, and he loves the Cowboys and will stand up for them and fight for them and defend them. And I get it. But saving plays, not in week 7, 8, 9. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. And even last year, after the bye week, they kind of got it together, right? And so I think a lot of people were hoping for that, especially since Mike McCarthy used the term trimester again. And last season, in the second trimester, they kind of got it together. So I think a lot of people were like, okay, maybe they'll do that again. But they're just not. It's just not coming together. And the explanations that Mike McCarthy is giving are just not cutting it. They're not making sense to people who know ball. Mill said, I said JK. You're right, you did. You're right, you did. You did say JK. But no, there's some people have been saying that. So I'm sorry for putting that on you. Y'all don't judge Mills. He said JK. I read that wrong. So if you're listening and not necessarily reading the screen, he hasn't had that much hopium. He's not that off. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what John Owning had to say. Man, this clip between Trayvon and Micah came up as soon as I went back to Twitter. It hurts my feelings. I'm not gonna lie. I'm so hurt by this whole situation. And I'm smiling, but like, y'all, I am hurt. We might have to talk about it again at some point. But yeah, John Owning. So he put up a post-game thread, and he does this after every game. But this time we'll go over some of the stuff that he shared. Let's see. Let me get this. Share the screen. Okay, so in the first post that he made, he says the DTs get reached bad, but DeMarvion overshown pursuit dissuades the RB from taking the early cutback lane. Diggs does a good job hammering Juszczyk, I think that's how you say it, to turn the ball back inside to Overshown, who was able to slip past Kittle and make the stop. So I commented on Overshown during the game. And one thing that I want y'all to remember about me, I have only been watching film regularly since... Actually, let me not lie. I'm still not watching it regularly. I still struggle to find time to watch film, and I'm getting there. But I didn't even start watching film until like this time last year. I started getting better about analyzing the game and the broadcast view, but like I wasn't really watching like the all 22 like this until like maybe this time last year. I don't even remember. It hasn't been that long. If it's been 2 years, that's the long end, right? And so a lot of times I'll avoid saying certain things during the game unless I'm really, really sure. And what I said about DeMarvion Overshown is one of those things that you should take with a grain of salt. And I said something, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something about his instincts. And I was like normally he has really good instincts. I wonder what's going on. But then upon further review, I realized that stuff like this is what was happening, was that the 49ers were figuring out how to use motion and other things to take him out of the game because they saw him as a threat. So it's not that his instincts were off. It's more so that they were tricking him, basically. And there was a play that I shared. Brian Baldinger did a play review or a film review. And in one of the plays, it was Kittle going into motion and it pulled Overshown away from where the play was actually going. And I quoted that and I was like, so George Kittle was basically Overshown bait. And so that's one of the things that they were doing, where they would take someone who's known to be a threat like George Kittle and moving them to see, okay, who's going to be on this guy and can we remove this person from where the action is? Because it's like, okay, if we put George Kittle in motion, then whoever they feel like is the most prepared to make a stop, that's probably who's going to follow him, right? And so in a lot of cases, that was Overshown, and it was just, different things to like misdirect him, hopefully confuse him, or just outright pull him away from the action. And so that was happening a little bit. All right, so let me minimize this and we'll go back to what Oni was talking about. He says Dono has to run the alley from here too high to make the run fits work, but he gets caught falling for the wide zone fake, which isn't even very good in the first place, forcing Overshown to have to make a 1v2 tackle in space. Things like this were happening as well. And the result is a giant gain. So I'll maximize this so y'all can see more of what he was talking about. That is a huge gain. And I think that's either Lufau or Kendricks chasing behind. I don't know. It's kind of blurry. But yeah, there were a lot of people who were running after that play and trying to stop what was about to happen. But Overshown got it done. He's definitely the fastest. Owning goes on and says, not going to surprise anyone, but the MTs were brutal against SF, got consistently reached and cut off even when they have leverage. They're laid off the ball, getting vertically displaced off the line of scrimmage. Not good, but also not surprising. One of the top priorities this offseason has to be, show more, has to be improving the interior defensive line. It's impossible to defend the run consistently given the contributions Dallas is currently getting. Look at the best linebackers in the NFL, and they almost unanimously have ass-kicking interior defensive linemen in front of them that enable them to maximize their ability to contribute on any given play. Even Fred Warner wouldn't look great if he was playing behind Dallas's interior defensive line. That's actually something a lot of people have been bringing up about the Cowboys, not just with Fred Warner, but even with plays like Derrick Henry and who else? Pretty much anybody people have talked about, like, well, what if we had gotten that person, or what if they had traded for that person? And people are like, well, if you put them into Dallas's system, they wouldn't look good. And so I think this is one of the more applicable situations where that does apply. It's hard for me to believe that Derrick Henry wouldn't look good at all. But in this situation, like, I think Owning has a point just because of the relationship between linebackers and defensive linemen and what that can do in terms of what your linebackers are able to do and with how much confidence they're able to play based on what your linemen are doing. So Owning continues, the line of scrimmage was the 21-yard line, but look where your nose tackle ends up once a tackle is being made. 5 yards downfield, ungood. So that's a really good point. So for anyone who is new to evaluating defensive linemen, one of the things that you don't want to see is them moving backwards. And so it'll happen sometimes by a little bit. And a lot of times it might happen just because they're trying to readjust, gain leverage, or attack in some sort of way. And maybe there's a lack of awareness about their foot placement, or they really are going against someone strong and they kind of get nudged backwards, right? So even though you still don't want to see it, you might see a yard or so. You might see a step or so. But 5 yards, fam, 5 yards is crazy. And that's something you definitely don't want to see. You can file that right next to earlier in the season, Brian Broaddus was on the show and he talked about not wanting to see the numbers from the sideline. In other words, not wanting to see your nose tackle turn to the side for any reason. You can file moving them 5 yards backwards right along the same lines. You don't want to see that either. So for anyone who was wondering, why is everybody so upset with Mazi? Why is everybody off Mazi all of a sudden? It was because of stuff that was happening like this. Let's see. Clement says, Mazi is too slow off the ball and is getting washed down by one of the 49ers blockers, which opens the running lane for Jordan Mason, which is the last person that you want having a running lane. And Mills says, yeah, not going to lie, this season has been very weird. We are way better than what we displayed. Same core, same head coach. It's not making sense. Mills, I don't know if you were here earlier when I was talking about that, but I was saying that's one of the things that I was hoping to be able to investigate a little bit more, because to me, that's the story right now. A lot of people are saying there is no story, or there's no story without the drama. I feel like there's so much to talk about. If we don't talk about Trayvon Diggs for the rest of the season, if we don't talk about Micah Parsons' podcast for the rest of the season, if we don't talk about Jerry Jones for the rest of the season, there is, well, actually, no. Let me take that back, because Jerry Jones is relevant to this story because of his decision making. But there's so many stories to tell just related to what we're seeing on the field. But then again, in order to even see the potential for those stories, you do have to look at these players as human beings and not machines, and understand that, yes, we're talking about their on-field performance, but there's something that's happening to them as people that's influencing that performance, which apparently makes me too subjective or it means I make excuses, or whatever other bullshit people want to say about me and the way that I talk to and about players. Yes, I took that shit personally. I'm mad about it. Clement says, other teams are double teaming Osa because they know that he is a disruptive force in the running game. Absolutely. He's been double teamed more this season, I think, than ever. And here's one thing that I'm going to say about Osa. You can see it in practice. I'm going to say this here because I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to say this in person to him again. But you can see it in practice. When I have watched them in practice, Osa is one of those people who he does not take a rep off. You can tell every single rep, even if they're just going against the little padded things that they push up in the air, like the things that you knock down on the ground. Every single time you can tell he is paying attention to the start and the finish. He doesn't finish lazy. He doesn't start lazy. He's not like, oh, I've done this a million times. Every single time there's attention to detail. There's intent. There's like, it almost looks like he's trying to literally get better with every rep. And I think that comes across on the field. I think that's why he is one of the most impactful defensive linemen that they have. I think that's why he's one of the highest graded members, according to PFF, of the Cowboys defense. Because that whole mantra of play the way you practice, he lives that shit. When I see him play, and he does good things, and it's fun to watch, but it doesn't surprise me because I've watched him practice and I watch how much care he puts into that. And you can see, I don't know why I have an alarm for 1:38, but you can literally see the difference in his reps versus like the reps of other guys on the defensive line. And that's not to knock them, not intentionally. Maybe it is a knock. Maybe they should step their game up. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to say maybe. You should step your game up. If you are on the Cowboys defensive line and you are not practicing the way that Osa Odighizuwa is practicing, you should step your game up. I'll put that out there. I think I can say that without coming off rude or disrespectful. But yeah, you can see it in the way that he practices, and it 100% carries over to the way he plays, and he deserves all the flowers for that. Let's see. Albert, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Says 49ers victory of the Cowboys was typical BS. They were somewhat flat in the first half, got hot in the second, and might have lost the game in the fourth quarter. That third quarter was crazy. Getting outscored 21-0 in one quarter is bananas. And yes, I know the defense should have done more to mitigate that. But had the offense actually showed up in the third quarter, you have to ask yourself, would the 49ers offense even have been on the field long enough to score 21? So that's one of the things that bothered me about that. Like that whole complimentary football thing that Mike McCarthy talks about disappeared after halftime, completely disappeared. So yeah, the defense dropped the ball. I gotta have to laugh because like Chauncey literally dropped the ball. In his defense, that was a tipped ball. It's not like it was in the air normally. It was tipped. It was going all different directions, and he's not used to having to catch those. But yeah, the defense dropped the ball, absolutely. But the offense did not help them at all. They got no relief, no breaks. So yeah, I kind of understand why they fell off a little bit. All right. Let's keep going. John Owning says Chauncey Golston did some good things. Yes, he did. Osa did some good things. He absolutely did. But the rest of the DL struggled mightily versus the run. Yes, they did. Dallas needs Micah and D-Law back in the worst way. Gotta agree with him on that. Tyrus Wheat, Linval Joseph, Mozzie Smith, and KJ Henry all registered a 0% pass rush win rate against San Francisco. Carl Lawson finished at 5%. When 5 of your 8 defensive linemen finish with a 5% or less pass rush win rate, it's a huge problem. Agreed. No argument from me there. It goes on, keep an eye on Cooper Beebe. Not only does he get a sweet pancake as a puller, impressive, but he also shows the awareness to fall on the fumble and prevent the turnover. So I had to play this clip a few times because just watching BB's instincts on this is fun. Thought the rookie had a pretty good game, to be honest. Only gave up 1 pressure in the pass pro as well. So this is Cooper Beebe right here. So if you watch him from the beginning, there he is in the middle. He pushes someone out of his way, pushes that guy to the ground. And by someone, I mean Jake Ferguson. He pushed his own teammate out of the way so he could dirt a dude. Like, that's how intent he was on getting that dude in the ground. He was like, I don't care if we on the same side. You need to move, fam. So going back to the beginning, he's running, runs into Jake Ferguson. The guy that Jake Ferguson was trying to tackle, BB puts him into the ground, gets the ball. So yeah, this was definitely a good rep for BB. Good show from him. I don't hear nobody talking about the length of his arms anymore. Do you? I feel like going into the draft, it was all Cooper Beebe has short arms. No one's saying that anymore. Here he says, run isn't very effective because San Francisco actually understands how to bump their run fits versus a sift action. Is that supposed to be shift action? I've never heard of a sift action. Sifting is what you do to flour. I'm like, that could be a thing. But watch the combo from BB and Tyler Smith on the 2i. Smith just tosses him to the ground to finish it off. So for those who don't know, a 2i is the gap to the inside of the 2 gap. The 2 gap being that space in between. Here it's Cooper Beebe and Tyler Smith. So your center and your guard there. So watch them to the right. And into the ground. Tyler Smith has really good core strength. You can tell by the way he moves. Like, you don't put someone in the ground with that much control unless you have really good biomechanics and core strength. Dude takes care of his body, and you can see it. All right. Terrence Steele, comment about Terrence Steele's hands. We were talking about this earlier. Terrence Steele simply puts himself in too many situations where his outside strike lands down the middle of the pass rusher, gives the pass rusher easy access to win the corner and flatten to the QB. I know Steele is going against the top of the top pass rushers, referring to Nick Bosa. Where'd it go? It disappeared. Oh, here it is. I know Steele isn't going against the top of the top pass rushers, but he can't make life easy on him. Agreed. Like, if anything, that's when you want to be more careful. That's when you want to be more fundamentally sound. And stuff like that is why our coordinators are in their press conferences going into week 9 talking about fundamentals. He says, wasn't anywhere near perfect, but I love the way Tyler Guyton battled his ass off through the evening. Agreed. And here's a very nice rep versus Nick Bosa. Notice how he keeps his outside hand back to prevent Bosa parrying it with a 2-hand swipe. Also uses his inside hand to paw and draw out Bosa's swipe before refitting his hands after Bosa whiffs. That's a quality rep. Tyler Guyton has put a lot of work into his hands. And I think one of the reasons that hasn't always shown is because basically if your feet are off, it's going to be hard for your hands to do the right thing. Like, if your feet are off, then you're not even in the right place. Your body isn't even in the right position. And basically, and this applies not only to football, but this is something that you even learn with lifting weights, is that your lower body is responsible for transferring force from the ground to your upper appendages. So it's like, if you're not even getting that ground contact right, if you're not getting the engagement of your lower body and the biomechanics of your lower body correct, it's going to be hard for your hands to do what they're supposed to do. Like, for any of y'all in the chat, if you know how to punch, like, imagine trying to throw a proper punch with one foot in the air, like without both feet on the ground, or with like a really wide stance or a really narrow stance, or imagine trying to throw a punch, but staying on your tiptoes the whole time, stuff like that. Right. Or like, imagine trying to throw a punch, but you're not stepping in front of the person that you're trying to hit. Things like that is how you can kind of mentally compare what it's like to try to use your hands properly as an offensive lineman, but your feet and the rest of your body aren't doing what they're supposed to. Like, imagine trying to throw a punch without rotating your core or with a weak core. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to go well. And maybe your fist might move, but is it going to be a quality punch? No, it won't. So I like, this is one of the reps where I'm like, okay, I can see that Guyton has been putting in work. He's getting closer to a quality anchor. His weight isn't over on his toes as much. Now, he does end up falling forward, but it has more to do with the fact that the guy he's basically chasing fell down. And so, yes, his weight was a little bit too forward. That's why he ended up falling over on top of that guy. But I do believe that like some of the things that would normally work against him wouldn't have worked in the situation had that guy stayed up on the ground. And let's be real, dude fell on the ground because Tyler Guyton guided him there. So, yeah, I say, dude, Nick Bosa, he deserves the credit for doing that against Nick Bosa. So, yeah, good job, Tyler Guyton. I love seeing it. The Cowboys used a shift motion on 66.1% of their plays yesterday, a season high. Unfortunately, this doesn't tell us their motion at the snap. So he goes on to get the statistics from Seth Walder about the motion at the snap. So apparently they only ran motion at the snap 12% of the time. And according to this thread, going into this game, they were doing it 14%. So at snap motion actually went down, which is the opposite of what you need. Because essentially, especially considering what the Cowboys are dealing with, which Mike McCarthy sees it because he keeps bringing up the issues with protection, the issues with the run game. So you see that you need to do something to slow down or confuse or limit the impact of the opposing defense. And at snap motion is one of the things that can do that. It forces them to have to make choices. What you don't want is to move somebody and give the defense a chance to adjust, because what it looks like a lot of times is that the Cowboys offense is using motion literally to just figure out, okay, is the defense in man or are they in zone? And that's all the information they're getting. And then once they figure out, they stop and then they snap the ball. But I'm just like, a good defense, they can even adjust to that. Like, you might think that you see one thing based on the motion that you did, but by the time you set again and they reset, they might have a whole nother plan. So yeah, we just need to see more at snap motion. I don't understand why it's not happening. And I'm actually becoming exhausted with the number of times I have to say, I don't understand. And this doesn't make sense. And it's not working. And you can see it's not working. Like, so many of these things, this ain't the first week that they didn't do a lot with that snap motion. Like, yes, it was their lowest rate of that snap motion, but they were 14% going into this week, which means it was already low, which means you have plenty of film and plenty of game tape that shows this is not working. We need to do more. We need to do better. You have plenty of evidence, right? Like the 49ers game was not a unique situation here. So yeah, it's just frustrating at this point because there's no excuse. This isn't like week 1 or week 2 where they're like trying new stuff. It's like, no, we've seen this over and over again. It's not working. Why are you not adjusting? Why are you not doing something different? Let's see. I'm trying to see if there was anything else in this thread that was relevant. She talked about Tyler Guyton, talked about the motion. He says a few more things. You should definitely follow John Owning if you're not. But the last thing he put in the thread was in 2023, Dak Prescott had 6 games with a 60% or less accurate rate, and he has already equaled that total in just 7 games this season. And for reference, 70% is usually the goal. That's usually what him and Mike McCarthy are going for. So they're a whole 10% below what they feel like should be the minimum. Only 1 game with an accuracy rate above 60.1% with this season. Not good, regardless of the talent around him. So that's another one of the things that a lot of people who are like, yeah, Dak Prescott is regressing, that y'all might point to. And once again, I'm not going to argue with that, but just please refer back to some of the other factors that I mentioned. I just want us to have a full conversation about it. I just want us to have a full educated conversation about it if we're going to talk about it. That's all. All right. So I'm gonna read some of y'all's comments and see where we go from there. I did want to go over some of the sound from the coordinators, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm tired. I still might, depending on what y'all's comments say. Let's see, where's the last thing that I read? Mills says, I'm always support you regardless. I think you're the most humble person I've met out the cowboy community. Oh, thank you. I've met a lot. Your energy was pure. That is so kind. Thank you so much. Albert says the 49ers defense is piss poor this year. Damn. They're giving up significant points. In the Dallas game, they gave up two touchdowns to CeeDee Lamb, who was wide open. That was crazy that he was wide open. I was watching like, how did that happen? Hey, JV's here. Good to see you, JV. And Clement says to Albert, the game was lost in the third quarter when they outscored us 21-0, not the first half, as we had a 10-6 halftime lead. I'm with you on that. I actually felt good about the game going into halftime. The Cowboys had the lead, and I was thinking like, okay, you know, there's some things that they need to do better, but like they can adjust, they can come back even stronger. They got to hold this lead and keep doing what they're doing, and they didn't hold the lead or keep doing what they were doing. It was not good. Complementary football is when all three areas of the team are doing their job to win the game. Offense has to move the ball and score points. For me, touchdowns instead of field goals. Agreed. Defense has to stop the run and win on third down, getting off the field. And special teams need to make kicks and change field position and make good returns on kickoff and punt. Agreed. Albert says the defense isn't giving Dallas offense much support in games. This is the second game where Dallas came back and made a run at trying to win offensively, but got nothing from the defense. I don't know. The defense was actually doing its job, especially in the first half. And I really think that they got worn out in the third quarter. And once again, this is more context than an excuse. But I just feel like, because what did the offense do in the third quarter? So they started off by punting the ball to San Francisco. And then I think they had like, the next time they were on the field, the drive ended in an interception. And I think the time after that was a 3-and-out. And then the time after that going into the fourth quarter was another 3-and-out, I believe. So yeah, 2 3-and-outs and an interception. Like, the offense barely gave the defense a chance to get a break or even just played the time of possession battle. Like, you can't score if you don't have the ball. So we're going to get a long drive down the field. We're going to eat the clock. We're going to hold this lead. It was none of that, you know? So yeah, I got to be with Clement on this one. I feel like the offense did more to let the team down in this situation. Neither side was perfect, but I feel like the game could have been saved by the offense stepping up easier than it could have been saved by the defense stepping up. You know what I'm saying? Clement says the score was 30-24. Dallas had a late surge, but as per usual, ran out of time. They had a late surge, but that surge shouldn't have been late. That surge should have started in the third quarter. That surge should have been carried over from the first half, in my opinion. Like, you can't get outscored 21-0 in the third quarter unless you score 0 points. Like, that's on the offense. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that first possession in the third quarter, if that goes all the way down the field, instead of ending in an interception, not only are you taking time off the clock, but you know, even if you get a field goal there, we're talking about a difference in momentum, a difference in score. Like, yeah. I needed the offense to step up in the third quarter. Clement, I think it's talking about Tyler Guyton. Feet needs to be together with the hands. His outside hands needs to paw and push at the outside shoulder of Bosa and force him to go out wider to get to Dak. And he is also catching the defender going backwards. This is true. And this is why me and other people are like, better, not perfect, because of stuff like this. When you are backpedaling into your pass set, you want your hands to punch the outside shoulder of the defender and ride him around the QB. I'm going to have to call you when I start studying O-line again, Clement. Then it is on the QB to step up into the pocket and make an accurate throw. Yes, that part I know. And the first part that you mentioned has not been happening. Clement says, I have an answer for how to slow down an aggressive defense. 1, start using pre-snap motion. Yes. To change the eye line of the defense. 2, throw screens to the running back, wide receiver, or tight end and get the blockers in front to block. 3, use the receiver to fake block and see them out on a route. I think that's supposed to be send them out on a route, or the running back on a wheel route down the sideline. So the screens and pre-snap motion that you're talking about, those are things people have been begging Mike McCarthy for since like last year. And writer Albert Lanier says, frankly, the Cowboys need a trade or two, likely for a running back or a DB or two. Sticking with the gang who can't defend the run and can't score enough points isn't working. Oh, goodness. I'm tired, so I'm not even going to talk about trades because I don't think they're going to happen. I don't think they're going to happen. But I do think that I think somebody said it earlier, even if trades do happen, even if there are personnel changes, if there aren't changes in the scheme and in the coaching and in possibly the culture is not going to make a difference. JV, I'm so happy to see you here. And I hope you go back to the beginning and watch it, even if you just do it tomorrow, like after you wake up, and go back to the beginning, because I shared a story that I think you'll like to hear, but I don't want to go over it again right now. Mills said, I started the Relentless book. I like it already. Thank y'all for that. It is a good book. The Dallas defense is like Anthony Richardson, too tired. Oh my goodness. JV says, I saw Vach and Skywalker yesterday, and the plays they highlighted had me LMAO. I didn't get to watch that full episode. I need to go back and watch it. I saw part of it. I started watching the beginning, and I didn't get to finish. But you're not the first person to mention that they brought a little bit of humor to this situation. Not in the sense of excuses, but just like basically laughing at it, which I think one of them has said in the past, sometimes you got to laugh to keep from crying. I think I've seen Skywalker still say that. So I get it. It's tough. I'm kind of at that point as well, where it's just like, I can keep imagining scenarios where the Cowboys will do better, or things that they can do to improve. I can keep imagining that, but it's just at this point to realistically expect it, I just can't, because it's not even on the players. Like, there are some players that I know have amazing work ethic. CeeDee Lamb, amazing work ethic. Jalen Tolbert, amazing work ethic. Dak usually has amazing work ethic. I don't know what's going on with him this year. Maybe he still does, and it's not translating for some reason. I don't know. What the fuck is going on outside? Oso Digizua, hardworking guy, amazing work ethic. Maris Luafau, amazing work ethic. DeMarvion Overshown. Like, I could go, like, there's so many guys in that locker room who have such good work ethic. And so it's like in my mind, I can imagine them doing something to make a difference. But the reality is, none of those guys can just up and go rogue by themselves and save the entire day by themselves. So it's going to take another overused phrase from the Cowboys this year, everybody being on the same page. I think DeMarvion Overshown mentioned that, because I put that in my notes. Maybe we will listen to some of the sound if necessary. But Overshown said, I think somebody asked him about Zimmer, and he said, I can't say it's all Zim. And I didn't write down the exact quote, but in so many words, he said, it's us as a whole. We all got to be on the same page. And that something about trying to adjust fast. Because the note that I wrote in response to that, I said, does Zim feel like they aren't on the same page? And why would DeMarvion Overshown say that? Because that's something we haven't heard as much from the defense. Anybody saying that they're not on the same page. And Eric Kendricks is known for being an amazing green dot and keeping the defense organized. So that's one of those things that, like, if I were allowed in the locker room tomorrow, I would love to ask, like, yo, what did you mean by that? In what ways are you not on the same page? Is this in reference to something that's happening on the field that's the responsibility of Eric Kendricks? Do you feel like there's something that Zim is trying to do that isn't translating? What exactly are you getting at with that statement? So yeah, but the fact that things like that keep coming up, them not being on the same page, them having communication issues, them needing to work on fundamentals, needing to practice better. I'm just like, if we're still talking about that stuff going into week 9, it just makes me a lot less hopeful that a lot of the things that I can imagine going better on the field will actually happen. Now, one bit of hope that I do still have is that once Rico is back, that some things will happen better with the run game, and maybe they can get the play action going despite the issues that they're having with protection and the offensive line. And who knows what kind of impact Micah and D-Law coming back will have, especially considering the ways in which various members of the defense have had to step up in their absence. If they can maintain their level of performance and Micah and D-Law come back, we might see a totally transformed defense. But I get nervous about thinking like that. At this point, I get nervous about thinking like that. So I'm going to put that out there and scoot away from it really quickly. Clement says, how are we not on the same page? This is week 9 of the season. This is inexcusable. It is. I agree with you, fam. I know that we have injured players. We got to do better. Same thing with the offense. On both sides. I think the thing with the offense, though, is you can just see it easier. So when people on the offense say we're not on the same page, I'm like, that don't surprise me. But when you say it on defense, especially considering that they rolled out some they've been rolling out different stuff. Like they were doing the whole 6-man front thing, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. You seem to kind of be doing something with that. So it didn't look like they weren't on the same page. It looked like the 49ers was just getting the best of them in terms of using motion against them. So I don't know. I would love some more insight on that. CeeDee Lamb used the word sickening. He said that he and Dak are getting on the same page. I'm so sick of this phrase. They just need to, quote, make the most of it and bring it to life. He said that they need better reads, better routes, and they need to be more physical at the top of the routes. I can see that. There are some situations where they weren't quite getting the separation that you would hope for. And there was actually a stat about Dak Prescott's tight window throws. Hold on, let me see if I can find that. Where is it? Dak Prescott has thrown into a tight window on a league high 22.5% of his passes this season, making him the only qualified quarterback with a mark over 20%. And then here's an accompanying note about the Falcons, the next opponent. Prescott has completed 7 of 12 tight window passes for 127 yards and a touchdown when targeting Jalen Tolbert, but just 11 of 47 tight window passes for 137 yards and 2 interceptions when targeting all other receivers. Matchup. The Falcons defense has forced a tight window on 18% of passes this season, the 3rd highest rate in the NFL. So Dak is already exceeding what's normally forced by the Falcons. And there was a time where we used to talk about Dak Prescott's tight window throws, and it was kind of a bragging point that even though he had to do it a lot, he was so good at it. It was just like, look at him go. He don't need a lot of space. He's so accurate that even with all these tight window throws, he's still getting it done. That's why he should be in consideration for MVP. That's why he's so dope, you know? And this year it's like, yeah, this whole tight window thing is not really working out. Like, can we do something about that? And I think that's what CeeDee Lamb was trying to get at when he talked in his post-game sound. I feel the need to bring it up now, but he talked in his post-game sound about how they were running routes and what they should do differently. His post-game sound was only a few minutes, so I'll just bring it up real quick so y'all can actually hear it in his own voice and hear his exact words. And then we'll address a couple of other things. If y'all have any questions or anything that y'all want me to bring up from anybody's interview, go ahead and put it in the chat now. So that way, after we do CD, we can just kind of run through the rest. I don't see. Oh, there he is. I'm like, where did he go? Okay, we'll share this.
have been here, but still ultimately the same result. What do you take out of the comeback, and what is the ultimate frustration that it still ends up being a loss?
We got a lot of fight in us, obviously. Granted, we started off slow offensively. Defense did a great job, I feel like, and then obviously tell it 2 halves, both offense and defense.
How bad did, I guess this is a captain on this question, but how badly did you want to end this losing streak to this team?
Pretty bad. It really sucks, especially coming here 3 times the last 3 years. Lost to them. Sickening.
For you and Dak, you feel like you guys got on the same page with there and got going. Is that a positive step that you can take forward?
Yeah, we about to get this thing rolling. For sure.
What more do you guys need from?
We gotta get started, bro. We gotta maintain the momentum. We can't really go out too up and down offensively, and I feel like everyone on the offense can say that. We got to go put up points, whether it's 3 or 7, regardless, every time we touch the field. So we got to build up the momentum, play complimentary football. We can't take any steps backwards as far as penalties or anything of that's self-conflicting, and I'm a firm believer in that, and I know we can do it. So with that, we got to be right.
Are there ways this receiving core can help Dak out more when you look at some of these plays and maybe these?
So this is where he's about to talk about the route running. He said the question was, are there ways the receiving core can help Dak out a little bit?
Some things. Do you feel like there's ways that you guys can help him out?
We got to catch the ball. I feel like that's the only way we can move the ball, stay above the sticks, and then get open. You know what I'm saying? Whatever play is called, we got to make most of it and bring it to life.
For Dak, it's 3 straight games with multiple interceptions. Just how do you kind of see that, and what are you talking to him about, and what is he seeing?
It's bug fixes. Obviously, it's some things that we can't control, some things that we can't. As for him, I know he can do better and have a better read, and as for us, we can have better routes, fight at the top of the routes. There's plenty of ways you can avoid an interception, you know what I'm saying, and on both parties, and I know he can vouch for that. But as for us, I can only speak for us, and we gotta be more physical at the top of the route, and we gotta win overall.
CD, what's the frustration you're seeing in this room right now, 3 and 4 after the loss?
We'll be all right. We'll bounce back. Everybody's frustrated because we lost. I mean, nobody likes winning, and I mean, you can't let that carry over. And take that from me, you know what I'm saying? So
I'll comment on something he said right here. When he said take that from me, like, it's a small phrase, right? But it was significant to me because we've seen CD. Actually, I can't even say we've seen CD. There have been losses where we didn't see CD because he was so upset that he didn't talk to the media, right? So for him to say, hey, we can't let this carry over. In other words, we need to take our lessons from this and move on. And then he says, take that from me. To me, hearing him say that was him acknowledging that from an emotional standpoint, he hasn't always handled losses like this the best way. And he's acknowledging that and basically saying, hey, I acknowledge that wasn't great, but I need to do better. And we all need to do better. Like, it felt like watching growth like right before our eyes. You know what I'm saying? So I really respected that response from him, and I respect him for giving good answers. He doesn't even look irritated or like he doesn't want to give the answers. It looks like he's literally just like, hey, we didn't do well. Here are some things that the receivers can do differently. Just answering the question, not mad at anybody, just handling it. And I'm not saying that to say like he was wrong for showing emotion, but this is definitely a more constructive way to go about things. So it's like you can still express how you're feeling. You can still express disappointment. Earlier in this soundbite, he said that the loss was sickening. That's expression of an emotion, and in my opinion, that's him expressing his viewpoint. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's a very short conversation, but I see a lot of growth from CeeDee Lamb here.
With that being said, we'll go back, watch this film tomorrow, still dwell on it a little bit, but Tuesday we have off, and we got to turn the page.
You guys had some success when you start, playing with a little bit more tempo. Is that something you'd like to tap in a little earlier in some of these games?
Yeah, that's for sure. We'd like to score a lot more earlier, too.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, let me see if y'all have had any questions, if there's anything else we need to go over. So Clemens talking about matchups against the Falcons, CeeDee Lamb versus AJ Terrell. Cowboys defense has their hands full with Kirk Cousins, Bijan Robinson, Daryl Mooney, and Drake London. Yes. When you list them like that, oh my goodness. Kyle Pitts is also a matchup issue at tight end. So linebackers, Kendricks, Wanye. I would love for them to give Wanye an opportunity. By all means, like, yes, let Wanye be part of this matchup conversation, please. They have to be on guard when it comes to Pitts. Yeah, I hope so. I would like to see Wanye Thomas get more opportunities in situations like that. JV said, I appreciate him keeping his composure. I guess also talking about CD. Yeah, agreed. Mill said, they missed DQ though. I know they still give him high praise. Yeah, I think there was part of that conversation between Micah and Trayvon where they didn't say it in so many words, but from what they did say, you could tell they missed Dan Quinn. You could tell. Clement says, we have been terrible this season when it comes to separation by receivers against DBs besides CD and Jalen Tolbert. Yeah, and that's pretty much what CD was saying. Writer Albert Lanier says CD is probably mad at the team at this point. I don't think he would ever express it that way. He'd probably express it as disappointment, but I could definitely see him having feeling away about the performance of the team and wanting to see his teammates do better and expressing that in a way that really drives home his point. I could see that. But I don't see him ever saying out loud that he's mad at the team or showing it in that way. But yeah, I could see him having feelings about their performance. Because I mean that's something that tends to frustrate him. He does not like to lose. He does not like to lose. If you listen to what he says a lot of times, even when he's being playful, you read between the lines, he doesn't like to lose. He doesn't like low scoring offenses. He doesn't like low productive offenses. All that stuff is irritating to him. And you can tell that he feels like the Cowboys are capable of doing a lot more. So even if we do want to characterize it as him being mad at the team, it's really more so that he just expects better and knows that they can do better. It's not like any actual animosity towards them. But yeah, I could see him definitely being like, "Yo, what the hell are we doing? Like this shit is unacceptable." Um, JV says Mike McCarthy doesn't even care about his legacy. Do you see him coaching in the NFL in the future years? And that's tough. I partially say yes because of the agent that he hired. The agent that he hired is someone who I feel like can get him a job. And especially if you can spin the influence of Jerry Jones in a certain way, right? So can I see it? Yes. Do I see him being like a top coach? No, I feel like his popularity is going to come from him coaching Aaron Rodgers and being a coach for the Dallas Cowboys. I can't see him doing something impactful or meaningful as a coach. I would almost like to see him in a different role, like the way that he cares about players' well-being, and I would almost prefer to see him work with the NFL Player Health and Safety Committee or something like that. Um, or work with players, maybe work with the NFLPA reps to help them, figure out how to navigate the politics of certain situations to improve conditions for them. It seems like he's really passionate about the players having what's best and the players having a good experience. So it just makes me wonder: is there some other role in the NFL or even some other role on the team where he could put that to better use, and let someone come in and direct the offense who's really going to push them to be aggressive, competitive. Albert says, only way Dallas is going to beat Atlanta is to get a lead, maybe of 10 or 15 points, and make some crucial defensive stops in the third and fourth quarter. Otherwise, it'll be a long day. I don't disagree with that. That seems pretty standard. Bill says, if we beat Atlanta, that would be considered a quality win. It would. That's a big if right now. But once again, not impossible. So I'm not gonna get into the hypotheticals. I'm not doing that to myself this week. But I will admit that it's not impossible. So On that note, we're at just over 2 hours. It is 2:16 a.m. I should really get some sleep. I need to wash my face and get some sleep. I'm tired. But thank y'all for joining me. Not as many people as I normally have, but the ones who did show up, especially you, JB, especially you, Mills, because y'all don't get to show up all the time. I appreciate y'all for making time to come through. Please like the video if you haven't. And if you are watching even after the fact and you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, turn your notifications on, share this video with someone you think you might enjoy it. And leave some comments, especially if you catch the beginning. Even if you just want to leave words of encouragement or something, y'all. I'm hurt. I would appreciate the words of encouragement. Thank you so much in advance for that. So on that note, I'm gonna get to bed though. Thank you once again to everybody watching now and everybody who watches after the fact. This has been another fun episode of Bitches on Sports. I'm Jazz Monet, and I'm out.